He's not back for love. He's back to measure your strength. When someone reappears in your life after leaving you, it is not romance. It is an experiment. They are not coming to offer you something greater. They are coming to see if you are weaker than the last time they left. This is the raw truth. People test you far more than they love you. And when someone returns, it is not your emotions that are being questioned. It is your discipline, your clarity, your commitment to yourself. You have to understand this. Every test is disguised as temptation. The face looks familiar. The words sound sweet. The tone feels comforting. It's designed to pull you back into the same cycle you fought so hard to escape. But the cycle doesn't change just because time has passed. What left you broken once will leave you broken again unless you rise above it. This is why strength isn't built when life is calm. It's built when temptation comes disguised as comfort, as familiarity, as the echo of what you once desired. You cannot afford to confuse familiarity with value. Someone can feel familiar to you and still be poison. Someone can know your weaknesses and still not honor your worth. And when they return, they will use that knowledge against you. They know which words soften your guard, which memories reopen your heart, which promises disarm your caution. That's why returning isn't love. It's strategy. It's an attempt to see if you've grown or if you'll surrender to the same illusion once again. So your value is defined not just by what you accept, but more importantly, by what you refuse. Anyone can accept attention. Anyone can fall into affection. That's easy. But to refuse what diminishes you, that's where strength is revealed. To say no when everything in your emotions screams yes, that is power. To reject comfort because you demand respect, that is maturity. And the person who returns to test you must be confronted with that strength. They must see that your silence speaks louder than their charm, that your standards cut deeper than their apologies, that your presence is not available on demand. Do not confuse forgiveness with access. You can forgive someone without letting them back in. You can release the bitterness without reopening the door. Forgiveness is about your peace. Access is about their privilege, and privilege must always be earned. If they walked away before, their return does not guarantee rights to your life. They are a visitor now, not a resident, and you decide how long they stay. This is the test. Will you fold or will you fortify? Will you give them what they want or will you demand what you deserve? Every person who returns brings with them an opportunity, not for reconnection, but for redefinition. You get to redefine who you are, what you stand for, and how much you respect yourself. If you take them back without standards, you tell the world you can be recycled. But if you hold your ground, you send a message, not just to them, but to yourself, that your worth is not negotiable. Passing the test means you don't respond with desperation. You respond with discipline. You don't react to their words. You measure them against their actions. You don't melt into their promises. You demand proof. And you don't fall into the fantasy of who they could be. You remember the reality of who they were. Because truth doesn't rewrite itself. If someone showed you their disregard once, they are capable of showing it again. And if you let them return without consequence, you are telling them you have learned nothing. You must stand firm. That is the whole point of the test. Not to prove whether you still feel, but to prove whether you can master your feelings. Anyone can love. It takes no strength to feel affection, but it takes strength to channel that affection into boundaries. It takes discipline to value yourself above the comfort of their presence. And it takes courage to accept loneliness rather than embrace weakness. Understand this. If he is back, it's not because you were forgotten. It's because you were remembered as someone who once allowed access. He wants to see if that door is still unlocked. Don't leave it open. Don't hand him the key. Make him face the reality that your life has moved forward, that your worth has expanded, that your strength has surpassed the cycle he is trying to drag you back into. In that moment, when you choose discipline over desperation, you win. Not just against him, but against yourself. The weaker self that once settled, that once tolerated, that once bent for the sake of keeping someone who was never strong enough to stay. He's not back for love. He's testing you. And if you pass this test, you'll realize something profound. The real victory was never about him. The real victory was about proving to yourself that your value does not shrink just because someone returns. Your value expands because you finally stood firm, and in standing firm, you became untouchable. He's not back for love. He's back to measure your strength. When someone reappears after walking away, it is rarely about love. It is about curiosity, ego, and power. They want to see if you are still the same person they once had control over, if your heart is still open to the same old story, if your standards have remained soft or if they have hardened into iron. Do not mistake his return for affection. Do not confuse his presence with devotion. His return is a test, and the way you respond will reveal everything about how far you've come. Understand this, people test boundaries more than they honor them. They return not because they cannot live without you, but because they want to know if you can live without them. It is an experiment designed to expose your weakness, to see if you still crave what once left you broken, to measure whether you have truly grown or whether you still bend at the same pressure points. He is not here to love you better. He is here to see if you are stronger than before. The truth is brutal but necessary. Love that leaves is love that was never strong enough. And if it returns without change, it is not love at all. It is temptation. Every test is disguised as temptation. The smile looks familiar. The words sound sweeter. The memories are rehearsed like a song you once couldn't stop replaying. But temptation has only one goal: to pull you backward. If you let yourself be pulled, you have not been tested, you have failed. Strength is not proven when life is easy. It is proven when the past knocks on your door dressed as comfort. When someone who once shattered you comes back with promises, it is not their words being measured, it is your resolve. Can you resist the urge to fall back into familiarity? Can you silence the part of you that wants to believe what your history has already exposed as false? Can you demand respect over comfort even when loneliness whispers against your ear? That is strength. You cannot afford to confuse forgiveness with access. Forgiveness is about you, about releasing bitterness so it no longer poisons your growth. But access is about them, and access must always be earned. Just because you can forgive does not mean you should open the door again. A closed door does not mean hatred. It means protection. It means wisdom. It means the test did not succeed in dragging you backward. And here is the principle. Your value is defined not only by what you accept, but more importantly, by what you refuse. Anyone can accept attention. Anyone can accept flattery. That's easy. But to refuse what does not align with your worth, that is where strength reveals itself. To stand in the face of desire and say, no, I am worth more than what you offer. That is where your power is forged. Do not underestimate what's at stake here. If you allow someone to recycle you, you train them to disrespect you. You become a revolving door to their convenience. They will leave when it suits them and return when boredom strikes because they know you'll always be there. That is not love. That is captivity. And captivity is the death of your spirit. So you must decide, do you want comfort or do you want freedom? Comfort is found in going back to what is familiar, but freedom is found in standing firm in what you've learned. And freedom always costs more. It costs the rush of attention. It costs the dopamine of sweet words. It costs the illusion of connection. But that price buys you something comfort never will: respect, dignity, and unshakable confidence in yourself. He is not back because he changed. He is back because he wonders if you did. He wants to measure your growth, to see if the boundaries you talk about are real or just words. And this is where you prove it. This is where you stop being a participant in someone else's experiment and start being the architect of your own life. Pass the test, not by arguing, not by explaining, not by proving your worth with words. Pass it by action, by silence, by refusing to step back into what once broke you. Pass it by showing that you cannot be accessed without respect, without consistency, without effort that matches your value. Pass it by holding the line, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because strength is not the absence of feelings. Strength is the mastery of them. Strength is saying, I still care, but I care about myself more. Strength is allowing yourself to remember the good moments, but refusing to be seduced by them. Strength is understanding that what feels like love may simply be a test of whether you have finally learned self-respect. He's not back for love. He's back to measure your strength. And if you pass this test, you will realize something powerful. The test was never about him. It was about you. It was about whether you would fold or fortify, whether you would sink into your past or step into your future. And when you stand your ground, when you refuse to be recycled, when you declare through action that your worth is non-negotiable, you win. Not against him, but against the version of yourself that once settled. That victory is priceless. So when the past comes knocking, don't open the door with weakness. Meet it with strength. Because love is not proven by who comes back. Love is proven by who respects you enough to never leave. And strength is proven by the courage to refuse anything less. Every test is disguised as temptation. Life rarely tests you through storms that are obvious. It tests you in the quiet moments where the decisions seem small, harmless, even inviting. Temptation never announces itself as destruction. It dresses itself as comfort, familiarity, and desire. It whispers instead of shouts. It promises instead of threatens. And that's why so many people fail, not because they don't know what's right, but because they confuse temptation with opportunity. You must see through the disguise. Every time you are tempted to go back to what once broke you, that is not life offering you love again. It is life testing whether you learned from your pain. Every time you are tempted to take the easy way instead of the hard way, that is not luck smiling at you. It is life testing whether you will grow or remain the same. The test doesn't look like an exam. It looks like a smile. It looks like an old habit. It looks like a shortcut that says just this once, no one will notice. That is temptation. And here's the truth. Temptation is always easier in the moment, but it always costs more in the end. It feels sweet now, but it makes you pay later. That is why it's a test. If the price came first, you'd never accept it. If the pain came before the pleasure, you'd never say yes. So temptation reverses the order. It gives you the pleasure now and hides the cost until later. Discipline, however, pays the price now and gives you the reward later. That is the difference. The question is, do you have the strength to pay up front, or will you keep borrowing comfort that drags you into debt with yourself? Every test is disguised as temptation. And the disguise is precise. It knows your weaknesses. It doesn't show up in areas where you are strong. It appears where you are fragile. If you are lonely, temptation shows up as attention. If you are insecure, temptation shows up as validation. If you are tired, temptation shows up as escape. That's why you cannot afford to judge the test by how it feels. You must judge it by what it produces. If it leaves you weaker, it was temptation. If it makes you stronger, it was growth. Think about how many people collapse because they can't distinguish between the two. They believe temptation is opportunity, and they believe testing is cruelty. But the reality is opposite. Temptation is the cruel trick that weakens you. Testing is the merciful mirror that reveals whether you've grown. When you are tempted, you are being tested. And when you overcome it, you don't just pass, you evolve. You must ask yourself in every moment of desire, is this helping me or is this hollowing me? Is this building my strength or feeding my weakness? Most people don't ask those questions because they don't want to hear the answer. They want to surrender to the moment. But the moment is a trap. And every trap feels good before it feels bad. That's why self-respect requires awareness, and awareness requires brutal honesty. You cannot say you are strong if you only resist what doesn't tempt you. True strength is measured in the heat of the test. When the familiar calls your name, when the easy path glitters with false promises, when your emotions beg you to give in, that is where strength is proven. Anyone can resist what doesn't move them. But to stare down the very thing that once controlled you and say, not anymore, that is mastery. And here's the paradox. Every temptation resisted becomes a new layer of strength. Every temptation surrendered to becomes a new chain around your neck. The chains don't form overnight. They build link by link, one compromise at a time. You think it's harmless. You think it's small. But the small compromises add up. until you're trapped by your own patterns. The opposite is also true. Every refusal, every disciplined no, every moment you choose long-term growth over short-term pleasure adds up until freedom becomes your reality. So do not pray for fewer tests. Pray for sharper vision to see temptation for what it is. Do not beg for life to go easy on you. Demand from yourself the strength to rise above the bait. Because the tests will not stop. The temptations will not disappear. What changes is you. What changes is your ability to see clearly that not every door that opens is meant to be walked through. Not every hand that reaches out deserves to be held. Not every voice that calls your name deserves your answer. This is how life shapes warriors. Not through easy blessings, but through disguised trials. Not through obvious battles, but through subtle traps. The people who rise are not those who never feel temptation. They are the ones who master it. They recognize the test. They resist the bait, and they walk away stronger than they were before. Every test is disguised as temptation. The disguise will change, the voice will adapt, the bait will evolve, but the principle remains the same. You are not being offered something new. You are being asked whether you still settle for the old. And when you stand firm, when you reject what once owned you, when you hold the line instead of folding to the moment, you win. Not just against the temptation, but against yourself. And that victory cannot be taken from you. So the next time temptation comes, remember, this is not opportunity. It is examination. This is not a gift. It is a measure. And the only way to pass is to stand taller than the weakness inside you. Because in the end, temptation is not about what's in front of you. It's about what's inside of you. And every time you resist, you declare to yourself, I am stronger than my past, stronger than my weakness, and stronger than the trap designed to break me. That is how you win. Your value is defined by what you refuse, not just what you accept. Anyone can accept praise, attention, and affection. That's easy. But it takes discipline to refuse what doesn't match your worth. The world does not measure you by what you gather. It measures you by what you walk away from. It is not about how many people want you. It is about how many people you have the strength to reject when they do not align with your standards. Think about it. A person who accepts everything is not valuable, they are available. Availability is not power. Value comes from scarcity, from selectivity, from the courage to say no even when it hurts. Diamonds are not valuable because they exist everywhere. They are valuable because they are rare, because not everyone can have them, because access is limited. Your life is no different. The more you hand yourself out, the less you are treasured. The more you restrict your energy to what is worthy, the more powerful you become. Refusal is strength. Saying no to shortcuts defines your integrity. Saying no to manipulation defines your clarity. Saying no to disrespect defines your dignity. And yet so many people confuse kindness with compliance, as if being liked is the same as being respected. It is not. You will be liked when you bend to everyone. But you will only be respected when you refuse what diminishes you. Respect is the fruit of refusal. This is where most people fail. They want approval so badly that they accept anything, any treatment, any relationship, any opportunity, just to feel validated. But the need for validation is the fastest way to destroy your value. When you accept everything, you declare to the world that you stand for nothing. When you refuse what lowers you, you declare to the world that your life is not open to negotiation. That is what makes you powerful. Your life is constantly being shaped by what you turn away from. Every moment is a choice, compromise or clarity, weakness or strength, desperation or dignity. You don't become strong by what you say yes to. You become strong by what you deny yourself. Anyone can indulge. Anyone can settle. Anyone can take the easy path. But to look temptation in the eye and reject it, to hear the voices of persuasion and stay silent, to feel the pull of comfort and stand firm, that is where greatness is forged. And here's the hard truth. Your worth is not proven when you accept something good. Your worth is proven when you refuse something almost good. When you turn away from the almost, the close enough, the maybe it'll work options, you prove that you are willing to wait for what is truly aligned. That's when life begins to honor your discipline. That's when respect finds you. That's when your value multiplies. The world is filled with people who settle, who trade long-term strength for short-term relief. They say yes because saying no is too painful. But every yes to the wrong thing is a no to yourself. Every acceptance of disrespect is a rejection of your own dignity. Every compromise of your standards is a betrayal of your future. And betrayal of self is the greatest form of weakness. So you must decide what you will refuse. Refuse to be disrespected. Refuse to be manipulated. Refuse to be an option when you deserve to be a priority. Refuse to waste time on people who show you no consistency. Refuse to lower your standards just because you're tired of waiting. Refuse to recycle your pain by going back to what already broke you. Every refusal builds a wall of strength around your value. Every refusal teaches the world that your worth is not negotiable, and the test is never easy. Temptation will disguise itself as opportunity. Disrespect will disguise itself as attention. Manipulation will disguise itself as love. But your refusal cuts through the disguise. It says, I see you for what you are, and I choose myself instead. That is not arrogance. That is power. You must remember this. Your future is not destroyed by what you missed out on. It is destroyed by what you allowed. People waste years not because opportunities never came, but because they refused to say no to the wrong ones. They held on to people they should have released. They accepted jobs they should have rejected. They entertained distractions they should have ignored. Value was never lost by missing a chance. Value is lost by tolerating what should never have been accepted. And when you finally grasp this, your life changes. You stop chasing. You stop begging. You stop lowering. Instead, you stand firm. You demand respect, and you let your refusals define you. Because the person who refuses wisely lives powerfully. The person who accepts everything lives miserably. So remember this truth. Your value is not measured by the things you say yes to. Anyone can say yes. Your value is measured by the strength of your no, the courage to walk away, the discipline to wait, the clarity to reject what doesn't align. That is where your power comes from. That is how respect is earned, and that is how you become untouchable. Your value is defined by what you refuse, not just what you accept. And every time you refuse what lowers you, you rise higher. Every time you deny what insults you, you strengthen your worth. Every time you walk away from what doesn't honor you, you teach the world that you cannot be bought, bent, or broken. That is the essence of true value. Pass the test by standing firm, not by falling back. Life will not measure you by how much you wanted something, but by how much discipline you showed when tested. The real exam is never written on paper. It's written in the moments when you are tempted to return to weakness. It comes when the past calls you back, when comfort whispers in your ear, when familiar pain dresses itself as affection. That is the test. And you cannot pass it by collapsing into old habits. You pass it only by standing tall, refusing to bend, and proving to yourself that your standards are stronger than your emotions. The greatest tests are never obvious. They rarely arrive as challenges that look dangerous. They arrive disguised as opportunity, disguised as love, disguised as the easy path. They invite you to take one step back into what you worked so hard to leave. And in that moment, the decision you make tells the world whether you've grown or whether you've stayed the same. Falling back means you wasted your pain. Standing firm means you transformed it into strength. Think about it. Anyone can stand tall when life is quiet. Anyone can appear disciplined when nothing tempting is pulling at them. But true strength is only revealed when the test comes, when the phone rings and it's the person you swore you'd never answer again, when the shortcut flashes in front of you, promising results without effort, when fear tells you to quit instead of pushing forward. That's where your integrity is measured. And you do not pass by going back. You pass by standing your ground even when it shakes beneath you. Standing firm is not about arrogance. It is about clarity. It is about knowing that falling back will cost you more than it gives. Falling back into someone's arms who already proved they cannot carry you. falling back into habits that once controlled you, falling back into comfort that destroys your potential. Each step backward takes from you the very strength you fought to build, and every compromise teaches your weakness to lead instead of your strength. The test is always the same. Will you choose the moment or will you choose your future? The moment is easy, seductive, and comforting. The future is costly, demanding, and lonely at times. But the moment steals your future, and the future redeems your moments. The person who passes the test is the one who refuses to sell their destiny for temporary relief. You must understand that falling back feels familiar, but it is never safe. Familiarity tricks you into believing you're secure. But security without respect is just captivity. A cage can feel safe too, but it robs you of freedom. The same applies to the tests you face. What you fall back into will always feel easier at first, but it steals your strength, your respect, and your freedom. Standing firm, however, creates power. When you stand firm once, you realize you can do it again. When you resist what once controlled you, you become stronger than you were yesterday. Every firm stand is a declaration. I cannot be recycled. I cannot be manipulated. I cannot be bent into the shape of who I used to be. That is the victory. Passing the test is not about proving something to others. It is about proving something to yourself. Because if you cannot trust yourself to stand firm, no victory outside of you will matter. Self-respect is built in the secret battles, the quiet refusals, the lonely stands where no one is watching. When you know you refuse temptation when you could have given in, you carry yourself differently. You walk into the future with confidence because you know your strength is not just a performance, it's real. The danger of falling back is not just that you lose progress, it's that you train yourself to believe you are powerless. Every time you bend, you make it easier to bend again. Every time you return, you convince yourself you cannot live without what hurts you. That is how weakness multiplies. But when you stand firm, even once, you teach yourself that discipline is possible. And the more you practice it, the more unshakable you become. So remember, the test is not about whether the temptation looks good. It always will. The test is about whether you are strong enough to choose respect over relief, growth over comfort, dignity over desperation. Every no you give to what is beneath you is a yes to the life you deserve. And every step backward you refuse is a step closer to the person you were meant to be. Pass the test by standing firm, not by falling back. Because the world is not watching your feelings, it's watching your actions. The test is not whether you loved, it's whether you disciplined. The test is not whether you cared, it's whether you grew. And in the end, you will not remember the moments you fell back into weakness. You will only remember the moments you stood firm, drew the line, and proved that your strength was greater than your temptation. That is how you win, not by folding, but by fortifying, not by returning, but by rising, not by falling back, but by standing firm until your future becomes stronger than your past.